The remnants of the group crashed through the undergrowth blindly, branches tearing at their flesh. Behind them, that unearthly shriek pursued them into the black heart of the endless woods. They ran until their lungs burned and legs threatened to collapse, the creature's cries fading into the night. Finally, John called a ragged halt, leaning against a massive oak to catch his breath. "Is everyone all right?" he panted, scanning their ashen faces by the thin moonlight filtering through the canopy. Emily nodded shakily, clutching her shredded pack. Ryan sported deep scratches down one cheek, but seemed otherwise unharmed. "But where's Claire?" Matt cried suddenly, whirling around in panic. They called her name desperately into the black forest, to no reply but their own echoes. "She must have gotten separated," John said grimly. "We need to backtrack now, before that thing finds her first." They retraced their panicked flight through the undergrowth, calling Claire's name until their voices were hoarse. At the edge of a small clearing, they found her huddled form, rocking back and forth, eyes wide and unseeing. "Claire, thank God," Matt breathed, pulling her into his arms, but she shoved him away with a snarl. "Don't touch me!" "It's your fault, all your fault," she shrieked hysterically. "If you hadn't dragged us out here, Mark would still be alive." "Claire, calm down, we're all on edge," John tried to reason. "No," she rounded on him, spitting with rage. "You said you'd keep you safe, but you failed at every turn. We never should have trusted you." The verbal lashing cut John to the core, reopening old wounds. His failure as a leader gaped before him, raw and bleeding. Without warning, Ryan lunged at Claire, backhanding her hard across the face. "Enough of your bitching," he growled. Matt saw red, tackling Ryan with a roar. The two men crashed to the forest floor in a tangle of flailing limbs, spitting curses. "Stop it!" Emily screamed, but her cries only seemed to inflame their rage further. Punches landed with sickening thuds as the last threads holding them together finally snapped. In the chaos, no one noticed the looming shadows detached from the trees, glowing eyes regarding them with alien interest. The creature had found them once more, and this time there would be no escape. The creature emerged silently from the shadows, regarding the fractured group with cold calculation as they brawled on the forest floor. With a bone-chilling shriek, it lunged, swatting Ryan aside with almost casual strength. Matt scrambled back in horror as those massive claws raked the air where his face had been. "Run!" John roared, snapping them from their trance. But the creature moved with shocking speed, cutting them off at every turn. Emily crashed through the undergrowth, branches tearing at her flesh. Behind came that unearthly shriek, urging her into a mindless panic. She dared not look back, legs burning as she fled for her life. A massive shape detached from the trees directly ahead. She skidded to a halt, heart seizing as glowing eyes regarded her hungrily. This was the end. Then John was there, swinging his walking stick with a primal yell. It connected with a sickening crunch against the creature's misshapen skull. It reeled back with an unearthly shriek, buying them precious seconds. "Run!" John grabbed Emily's arm, yanking her along as they fled into the black heart of the woods once more. Behind, that enraged howl pursued them, urging them to ever greater speeds. They crashed through the undergrowth until Emily's legs threatened to collapse. A massive oak loomed ahead. They could climb and find refuge among its upper branches. "Go, I'll hold it off," John yelled, spinning to face their pursuer head-on. Emily scrambled up the tree as fast as her trembling limbs allowed, just as the creature emerged, with shocking speed. John swung his walking stick desperately, but those claws moved with lightning quickness. He screamed as they raked his chest, flinging him aside like a rag doll. "No!" Emily sobbed silently from her perch, clamping a hand over her mouth to stifle any sound. Below, the creature regarded John's still form almost thoughtfully before melting back into the shadows of the endless woods. She was alone now in this nightmare, the creature's prey. Huddled in her leafy refuge, she wept silently as dawn's pale light filtered through the canopy, illuminating the horrors of this place. Somewhere out there in the black heart of the woods, Matt, Claire, and Ryan's fates were being decided in the darkness. Emily huddled in her leafy refuge as dawn's pale light filtered through the canopy, illuminating the horrors of this place. Her mind reeled with the events of the past days, Mark's disappearance, the creature's attacks, and now John's brutal death. She was alone in this nightmare forest. Somewhere out there, Matt, Claire, and Ryan's fates were being decided in the darkness. As for her, she was trapped. The creature would be hunting, and climbing down meant exposing herself. Her thirst and hunger grew as the day wore on, but she dared not move. Below, the forest seemed to come alive, strange rustlings and heavy footfalls circling the tree. Was it toying with her, waiting for her to show weakness? Night fell once more, blanketing the woods in an impenetrable black. Emily shivered uncontrollably, her mind spiraling into delirium. A heavy footfall directly below shook the tree, raining leaves down. 2 glowing orbs regarded her hungrily. It knows I'm here. It's found me. She clamped a hand over her mouth to stifle a sob, going utterly still as those eyes watched her unblinkingly. Then it was gone, melting back into the shadows. But she knew it was still out there, circling, waiting. Her fear and desperation reached a fever pitch as dehydration took its toll. She had to get water, had to find a way out of this nightmare. As dawn broke once more, Emily summoned her last reserves of courage and began her descent. Her limbs shook violently, threatening to give out at any moment. As her boots hit the forest floor, a crack of branches sounded directly ahead. She froze as the creature emerged, regarding her almost thoughtfully. It knows I'm weak. This is the end. As it began to circle, she snapped. "Enough!" Emily screamed, lunging for a fallen branch. "I won't be your prey anymore." Rage and desperation fueled her as she swung with wild abandon. The branch connected with a sickening crunch against the creature's skull. It reeled back with an unearthly shriek, momentarily stunned. This was her only chance. Gathering her last vestiges of strength, Emily bolted with everything she had left. Branches and brambles tore at her flesh, but she didn't stop, fueled by pure adrenaline and instinctual will to survive. Behind came that enraged howl, pushing her to new speeds. She had no idea how long or how far she ran, only that her body was at its breaking point. Finally, her legs gave out, sending her crashing through a wall of dense foliage. As darkness closed in, the last thing she saw was a glimmer of sunlight on moving water. Emily awoke to sunlight filtering through the trees and the gentle burble of moving water. Disoriented, she pushed herself up on trembling arms, taking in her surroundings. She was in a small clearing beside a rushing stream. Across the water, the tree line broke to reveal a dirt road and, in the distance, the rooftops of a small town. She had made it out. Emily crawled to the water's edge, gulping down handfuls of the clear liquid desperately. Revived, she scanned the opposite bank for a way across. A fallen log spanned the gap halfway up, just within reach. Gathering her last reserves of strength, Emily hauled herself onto the slippery bark and began inching her way across inch by agonizing inch. Halfway, her foot slipped, sending her sprawling with a cry. As she clung on desperately, a crack of branches sounded from the forest behind. Emily froze, heart seizing, as glowing eyes emerged to regard her from the tree line. It had followed her trail. and she was trapped on the log with nowhere left to turn. As the creature began to circle the bank, she knew this was the end. Then a crack of gunfire split the air. The creature reeled back with an unearthly shriek as bullets tore into its misshapen form. A grizzled man emerged from the trees, pumping his shotgun with practiced efficiency. "Get across, girl," he yelled, taking aim once more as the creature retreated into the forest. Emily scrambled the rest of the way on hands and knees, collapsing on the opposite bank in a sobbing heap. The hunter joined her, scanning the tree line warily. "Name's Will." "You're safe now," he said gruffly, helping her stand on shaking legs. "Let's get you looked after." At Will's homestead, Emily's ordeal came pouring out between mouthfuls of hot stew. The hunter listened gravely, eyes dark with understanding. "Those woods have a dark history," he said when she finished. "Folks go in but don't come out right. As for that thing, it's been stalking the forest longer than I've been alive. Some call it a Wendigo, a soul so consumed by evil it loses its humanity. But I think it may be something even older, drawn to feed on our fears and darkness. You were brave to survive it, girl. Now get your rest. You have a story to tell." And so Emily did just that, recovering her strength in Will's care. Though scars of the ordeal would remain, in sharing her tale she found the first steps toward healing. As for the creature, its true nature remained a mystery. But she took comfort knowing its reign of terror in those endless woods had come to an end. Emily spent the following weeks recovering at Will's homestead, putting distance between herself and those dark woods. Though nightmares still plagued her sleep, sharing her story brought a measure of catharsis. As her strength returned, Emily began venturing into town, where whispers followed her everywhere. Word had spread of the lone survivor emerging from the forest, pursued by some nameless evil. Some saw her as touched by darkness, others as blessed. All wanted to hear her tale, and she found solace in the retelling. Slowly, fragments of the others' fates emerged too through rumor. Claire and Ryan had been found weeks later, barely alive, stumbling out of the woods raving of monsters. Matt was never seen again. As for the creature, it seemed to have retreated back into the endless forest depths, at least for now. One crisp autumn evening, Emily sat by the fire writing when a knock came at the door. Will entered, face grim, holding out the day's newspaper. A story had caught the attention of papers statewide, the discovery of human remains deep in the forest. A search party had been organized to recover the bones, which were confirmed to belong to Matt through dental records. But what disturbed authorities most was the evidence of scavenging and gnawing found on the larger bones. Emily knew in her heart the creature was still out there. Its true nature, whatever evil had spawned it in those woods, was as much a mystery as the endless trees themselves. But its thirst for human prey had clearly not been slaked. That night, nightmares came as Emily tossed fitfully, plagued by visions of glowing eyes in the darkness and a hunger that could never be satisfied. Come morning, she knew what she had to do. Return to those woods one last time, face her demons, and put an end to the creature's reign of terror for good. Will tried to dissuade her, but saw the steely resolve in her eyes. "Very well, but I'm coming with you," he said gruffly. Together they packed provisions and Will's trusty shotgun, setting off into the dense forest once more as autumn's chill descended. They followed old game trails deep into the woods, leaves crunching underfoot. Strange rustlings echoed through the trees, putting them on high alert. At last, Emily paused, eyes widening. Tracks, fresh. They followed the massive claw marks warily. At a small clearing, Emily froze, face draining of color. Bones were strewn about, gnawed and cracked open. A nightmarish feast. A crack of branches directly ahead snapped them to attention. Glowing eyes regarded them hungrily from the shadows. This time, Emily was ready to face the creature and the darkness it represented once and for all. As it emerged with shocking speed, Will opened fire, buying them precious seconds. Emily lunged at it with a primal yell, swinging her walking stick with abandon. It connected with a sickening crunch against the creature's misshapen skull. It reeled back with an unearthly shriek, momentarily stunned. Will pumped round after round into its twisted form under a hail of buckshot until it collapsed with final gurgling breaths. The woods fell silent once more. Emily stood over the creature, face streaked with tears but eyes burning with resolve. She had faced her demons and survived, laying this evil to rest at long last. As for the endless forest and its dark secrets, only the trees would ever know. Thanks for listening to this story. Put a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.